This is Full Spectrum Risk from 360 Privacy. Risk is faster, more connected, and harder to predict than ever before. Today's threats are hybrid, adaptive, and designed to exploit speed, uncertainty, and exposure. In each episode, we explore the dynamics of modern risk and the decisions that define effective leadership, protection, and response. This isn't theory, it's real-world intelligence, and for those who lead, protect, invest, or advise, this is your briefing. Welcome to Full Spectrum Risk. I'm Chuck Randolph. Today, I'm joined by my longtime friend and colleague, another Chuck Tobin, who is the founder and president of At Risk International. He's the former president of the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, the current president of the International Protective Security Board. Chuck, I think you and I have presented more times than I can remember on threats, threat assessment, risk, protection. We've written together. We're on, I think every time I go somewhere, we're like two Chucks, which is great. $2 Chuck, I guess.
Exactly.
As we were, one of the reasons we asked you to come on, Chuck, is as we're recording this, we're at a moment of rising ideologically mixed violence. Some analysts are calling it a blend of grievance-driven extremist behaviors. Whatever it is, it's messy, sometimes idiosyncratic, and it's changing how leaders and protection teams should be thinking about risk today. You and I have had a couple of great conversations. I'm driving in my car, you're driving your car, about how this changed, and we decided, like, we need to come on and really bring this out to the community to talk. So, my friend and brother, thank you for joining Full Spectrum Risk on one of our inaugural episodes.
No, it's my pleasure. Look forward to the conversation, and hopefully we see more and more of these get produced by you guys.
Yeah, it's exciting, and I like the fact that we're pushing these out and bringing people like yourselves on. Let's start and kind of set a scene, because I want to kind of talk about the macro, but I think it would be good, especially with somebody like you that has a wide background in both threat assessment and practical EP, to kind of then zero that down to more tactical and practical stuff. So, Chuck, give the folks who are watching and listening in a quick read on what you're seeing in the threat environment right now, particularly with this idea of the mixed motivation, grievance-driven stuff that we're seeing. Is it different than what we used to traditionally call ideological threats?
Yeah, I mean, Chuck, we've talked about this ad nauseum, right? I mean, you think about the changes we've seen, say, post-COVID, and I'll still go back to that conversation I think we had back in 2020 about the traumatic injury, that everybody suffered as a result of being locked down, and the fear of death
Mhm.
that resulted from COVID, and the isolation that occurred. And not that I've seen a study on it. I'm sure there have been some, but if you think about just the way people are reacting emotionally to things, every client I work with says they have a much higher rate of communicated threats. People are more
Mm.
willing to speak out. And I think that that's been a trend we've noticed through open source intelligence work. All the protective intelligence programs have been running for many years now. The problem is that more and more people are invested in the notion that violence is okay. You saw from
Mhm.
the assassination of Brian Thompson and the follow-up surveys that were done that suggested that a significant amount of the population not only was willing to contribute to the suspect's financial legal fund, they also supported the notion that the assassination of corporate executives is justifiable, and political figures. Now, granted, we could probably assume that some of that's directed at President Trump and perhaps Elon Musk, but you would also recognize that it's extended beyond that. And the healthcare system, the financial sector, energy, have all in some way been kind of drawn into this conversation of, what harm are they doing? And I think I can justify acts against them. So I think it's a changing culture, unfortunately, at least within the North America region. But perhaps we may even see this right with all the crypto kidnappings and abductions that happened in Europe,
Yep.
Canada, other places. I think it's a trend that's going to continue.
Well, it just made me think about this. I mean, I need to call Brahm and get, after I talk to you, it'd be great to get his
Mm.
input from the other side of the pond and what they're seeing around this too. I was on the treadmill the other day, and I was listening to a post Charlie Kirk assassination. There's everyone's on talking about it right now, but I was trying to understand the more meta discussion around it in that 2022 descriptor that I think then FBI Director Wray called it like salad bar. What was he like? Salad bar extremism because ideology and extremism wasn't fitting into the box that it used to when you and I grew up in the industry. And now I think, and I do believe it's a post-COVID, oh Lord, a post-COVID issue that you know, and my idea is like, we haven't fully realized the issues and we fully haven't realized the stew that has been made in some people's homes and being stuck there during COVID. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think you're spot on, and I think the other part of this is the way this is extending itself. It's,
Yeah.
historically the targeting was at the principal, right? The company, the organization that represented the thing that you despise the most. But and in the past we'd seen scenarios where the affiliates, the third parties of that individual were perhaps lightly targeted, but more and more now, right? You think about, organizations that have financially or emotionally supported the Israeli-Palestine conflict, or organizations that have provided funding for, you know, organizations that supported or didn't support
Yep.
various initiatives relative to race or equality or et cetera. So now it's not just that my organization is creating a culture that is resulting in targeting, if I'm connected to them because I invest in them or I support them in some way, now I'm suddenly drawn into this conversation.
And the bifurcation of have or have not, taste great, less filling, wherever you are on that political spectrum, there is the center seems to be gone. This is not so much a political commentary, more of an observation statistically that, hey, look, and I think it was either you or Ross Hill that I heard once say, look, the far left and the far right are so far that if they turned around, they'd be staring at each other. And
Hmm.
as a
Hmm.
result, I think you're right. Like if I need my organizations to be fully aligned to me. I need my institutions to be fully aligned. And if they're not, by gosh, I have a grievance and I'm going to air it. And as you said earlier, I mean, I think it was the Harvard and somebody else both put out the idea of this like assassination culture and the
Hmm.
grievances are okay to take to the next level if you think it's going to get somewhere.
I was going to say, I think that the other part of that is we have to come to terms as to what we consider to be a threat, right? I mean, for certain circumstances, the term direct threat is required to be a certain
Right.
obligatory, standard like IRS 132. But direct threat's not what we're dealing with, and we know in most of the cases that we're looking at, the individual didn't communicate directly to the target. They might have communicated to a family member or somebody else about their
Yep.
intent or desire, but not directly to the target. So if we're missing that huge group of people that are having conversations not directly to the principal, then we're really facing or missing some opportunities. And unfortunately, the person that's receiving that message, right, the mother, the father, brother, sister, coworker, they just don't know what to do with it. And if it goes to law
Yep.
enforcement, they don't know what to do with it. So it sits there and resonates until it gets to a percolating level that it's catastrophic.
Well, I think you make a couple good points there worth pulling on and don't worry, gang, we're going to get down to the tactical soon, but we got to frame that, the environment we're in now. And you're absolutely right. Like what was it? Dick Lake, the former CSO for Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation years ago said, data is the analyst problem. And now I also think beyond the analyst, it's the agent's problem too, because there's so much data everywhere flowing around. You're absolutely right. I don't know what this indicator is. And if you put a cultural lens on that too, like I'm in a gaming culture, I'm in a farming culture, I'm in a industrial culture. I say a certain word, it has a connotation. Words have meaning, as to where I say it somewhere else, and all of a sudden there's red flags going up. And we're seeing a point now where at least my observation is not everybody's on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. They're all over. We're on everything from WhatsApp to X to TikTok to Instagram. Now you have fringe sites. So I think it goes back to now it's an analyst problem to say pull all these data points in and then say what does that mean? It's no longer I think it's dangerous to wait for it to show up on your door. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think we also got to get out of the notion that OSINT's the solution. I mean, we got to
Yeah.
collect all this data, but that agent in the field and the EA and the event planner, all have obligations to report abnormal, unusual activity, and quite
And what
often
does
that
that
stuff
mean
hits the
today?
floor.
Yeah,
Right.
and what does that mean? If I'm at a financial conference as opposed to I'm at an online gaming conference, what is normal? What is normal behavior, and what's the delta from that behavior for the deviant
Well,
behavior?
and I think we can argue not even argue, probably certainly rationalize the majority of the people that would be our frontline observers have not been trained to look for
Yeah,
behaviors of
agreed.
concern. And if they don't know what they're looking for, they're only going to tell us about the threat. They're not going to tell us
Yep,
about reconnaissance and boundary probing and things that are going to clue us in that this guy has been working his way towards an objective, right? So we need to work with that and make sure that training is accepted. And I think quite often we find the protectors are willing to deliver that training, but for whatever reason, the the C-suite, the family office, whomever says we're good, we don't need that. We know what we're looking for.
yeah. And let's come back to that, but I don't wanna lose something you said earlier, and, we're at a messy convergence of motivations and other things. So with that in mind, how do you think or how should the audience think about who becomes the threat and why?
Mm, everybody. I mean, we
Yeah,
we talk about this all the time, right? When somebody says um, we don't have the risk of violence, I'll always tell them every human being can kill at any time. And it's a matter of them making the determination that violence is acceptable as an outcome. And the problematic side is we isolate people. They don't have the opportunity maybe to speak to their friends about the thoughts they're having. We're working on Zoom. We're working from home most of the time. So the team building, the relationship building has dissipated. I'm just a weird guy that you see me on a call once a month or once a week, but you don't know what the rest of my life is like because we've
yeah.
lost that community connection, right? So at this point, anybody, insider, external, vendor, supplier, doesn't matter. They all present a potential threat, but we've got to be aware of the behavioral indicators then that tell us what's coming.
Yeah, that's actually a good point too, and I also think the other thing about, "Hey, look, I'm working from home and you don't know me, 9/10 of the day or 7/10 of the day," or whatever that might be. So, what becomes my what becomes my community? Is it AI? Is it an online friends group? Is it, and is it does it just become basically I go and I find an echo chamber that tells me that I'm right even if I'm wrong. There is no critical thinking. So at some point, I'm almost self-actualizing. And before you know it, I've gone from thought to action. I mean, there's
Mhm.
something in there. I'm gonna have to have a cup of coffee more and think about that. But it is, I mean, I think it is where we are. And I think, I go back to what was it, 2021 or 2022 when that young man showed up at Windsor Palace and he had the crossbow and he decided that, he had told what was the app replica and was talking to his online girlfriend and hey, I'm gonna go do something. And it said, "I believe in you," and he said, "Okay, I'm off." Fortunately, nothing
Mhm.
happened, but I mean, you're seeing more of those data points coming around where people, I think, are self-actualizing through a mirror of AI that just basically is trying to do only what it knows. It's not a reality. It's a ones and zero making statements that way. So, with all this in mind, though, Chuck, I mean, from a programmatic standpoint, take the role of a senior leader here. I mean, and I say demand because that sounds salacious and cool, but I mean, what's the expectations of modern protection now? Like, hey, cool. We drive the boss everywhere, and we have somebody at the office, or we
Mhm.
drive the boss, and we know where she's traveling. I mean, what should the expectations be?
Well, I mean, again, we've had this conversation here time and time again. It's uh,
I know.
we
Hey,
have
we're
we have
just saying we're just having a conversation we normally have at coffee or over a libation, except we're
right.
doing it for how many thousands of people may be listening in. No pressure.
The reality is that we have an uneducated consumer, and the consumer is pursuing the acquisition of services they think they need, a driver and an agent. And quite often, that's what your CSO or your VP of security is pushing for because that's what they know. And we really need to get everybody just to step back and think from a holistic perspective. What are all the controls that need to be in place for not just my key executive, but my second, third tier executives? And that has to be holistic. I've got to start with how do I get them off the X, scrubbing
Mhm.
their information off the web, ensuring that we've had conversation with the comms team so we know what we need to see and how we can work together with them, starting to build bubbles where we can around their residents, around their events, right? Engaging with the media event people early on, not moments before we
Yeah.
put boots on the ground, right? And all of that has to change to create that depth of protection strategy. Throwing a body at any one of these scenarios we've seen doesn't make a difference. Now, could we throw surveillance detection in to maybe counter some guy who's got the height and we need to own the higher ground? Maybe that's going to help in that one instance. But if you collectively look at all these different instances we've had, the need to be able to kind of build a comprehensive strategy is ever present. And I think we've had this conversation for years, but getting it to the point where it's consumed and carried forward is another conversation.
Chuck, are you I mean, in some ways, are you talking about convergence as it might be in the protection space? I mean, I know that's kind of a overused term, but I think, the name of this pod is full spectrum risk. So I think, like, are you talking about an integrated EP program? When people talk about convergence, integrated efforts and all that, is that what you're talking about here? Because look, you
Yep.
and I wish I could remember what we said the other day, but we were talking about how everything going on now is pushing it beyond that, just like within arm's reach, kind of like what is with arm's reach now in EP, those responsibilities.
I mean, to answer your first question, absolutely. If I think about the people I need on my team within a corporate space, right? I need legal on my team, right? I need that guidance to make sure we're doing things and don't put the shareholders in harm's way. I need somebody in HR to keep me in tune with what is our continuity strategy and how has the board discussed or decided who number two and number three is. And then how do we begin to think about our communications and meeting planners and how we can be working closer with them so
Yep.
that when they first have the year's list of activities, we're already read in. We're already starting to do the planning and say, listen, it's not just that we're going to New York City for an event. I'm going to tell you which hotels I think we should go to. I'm going to tell
Yep.
you which venues we should knock out because they're too risky for us. It's the other way around, though, right? The meeting planners come to us weeks before and say, yeah, you've got a trip in 2 weeks. I need boots on the ground to stand halls and walls. Uh, that doesn't give you the chance to eliminate the higher risk venues and higher risk activities.
And how do you look, you counsel and consult with a lot of folks, Fortune 50, Fortune 20, Fortune 5s, and help them figure out their program or help them advance their program. I mean, how are you thinking and how are you seeing people react to, like, the digital piece of modern EP? I mean, I know we've had different people try to tackle it, but I think we're at a point now where it's becoming part of the EP stack, if you will. I mean, what are you seeing and how are you counseling people?
Fortunately, I'm finding that's actually been accepted and tolerated much more than any of the physical elements. Because it's funny because we always talk about the notion that a lot of the consumers are willing to pay for something they see, right? I see a
Exactly.
driver, I see an agent, I'll pay for that. And in the past, I say, well, I want surveillance detection, I want counter surveillance, I want an advance agent. I don't see it, I'm not paying for it, right? So they exclude those. But the digital realm, they don't see that. But for some
Yeah.
reason, because cyber's been such a big conversation, they're thinking about, what products do I need to protect my executives' credit? What products do I need to keep their information of PII secured and their networks secured when they're working in remote destinations? So that's been an easier conversation. And I think it's actually become a door opener for some EP programs to say, listen, boss, I know you don't want the guy in the front right seat, or you want privacy when you're driving, so no designated agent on your back all the time. But we can do everything else to make it disappear as best as possible and monitor it for when people are trying to get that information.
So I think as cyber was, let's say 5 to 7 years ago, when you're right, like, it was trying to get, like, "Okay, here we go, here we go." I think the new leg on that stool is gonna be the cognitive or the narrative.
Mhm.
Like, it's also what is being said about you, what is being said about where you are, the organization, because going back to rewinding to the beginning of this episode, things like we've seen with Mangione or the unfortunate events in Minnesota or most recently with Charlie Kirk, like that you represent something. Not me, Chuck. I'm good. Nobody cares about me. But what's the narrative around what's that second and third narrative around you in the organization? I think that's the next thing that we're gonna see come into clarity that becomes that's my prediction, is part of that EP stack.
Yeah, I think you're right. When we look at protective intelligence programs,
Yep,
globally, a lot of them are still really just fancy geopolitical intelligence groups. They aren't dialing down into
no,
the
Chuck, it's called
geofencing
boutique, called boutique.
boutique. Okay, boutique. They aren't dialing down into the destinations the executives, staying at while they're on transit
Yeah,
and while they're at conferences. They're not geofencing maybe at a point where it's timely information. They could tell you tomorrow what the
yeah.
concerns are and the current themes that are coming on, but in the moment they don't necessarily have the software technologies or personnel to stay on top of what are people saying about my executive right now in this city at the investor relations conference, right? I mean, that's where we have to get, and we have the tools and we have the intellect to do it, but it's the investment is where the problem is.
Well, and there's a triage point in there too. I mean, how do you triage the signal from the noise? I mean, especially like you take something like at risk. You guys have been around for a very long time. I know. I mean, we worked together for a while, and lots of signals come in, and now we have to figure out like which one of these needles in the needle stack is the needle that we care about.
Mhm.
And you got to do. I mean, and is there a place for AI and things here to help? Help bring signals forward.
I mean, I'm going to skip the whole AI conversation because it's well above my pay grade, but I'll let you touch that one. But the reality is that if we're working with a threat management team, they have a person of interest list, right? So one, I got to make sure I'm comparing that person interest list to the destination I'm traveling, right? Just obvious. I don't want to move my principal into proximity to a person of concern. But based on our earlier comment, I also have to look at those bigger themes of what are we talking about right now that is going to draw unwanted attention? Is it about
Right.
Israel? Is it about Trump? Is it about whatever the topic of the day is? And do I see sentiment changing towards my executive? Then I kind of begin to focus that way. Again, it's such a huge swath of information. You really could get lost very quickly. But if I can dial down my, again, my intelligence collection requirements by event, not set them once. I got to set them by activity that I can begin to
Mhm.
refine them a little bit.
Actually, that's a really good point there, especially in thinking in terms of like triggers and indicators that you want to give that analyst. Because look, not all teams are great. I have a corporate team and 50 analysts and 10 devoted to, 10 devoted to protective intelligence. Many people are one people show or they're three or four people show. And I think
Mhm.
it's important to kind of zero down, like you're saying, on event-based triggers and indicators. I mean, how do you have those conversations? Let's go back for a second. You were talking about event folks. We have a stockholders meeting. We're meeting with everybody. How do you make that conversation around triggers and indicators palatable, if you will, to that event coordinator who's like, "This is one of 50 I've got. I have a contract with this hotel. I'm worried about food and bev, and this dude's standing up talking about intelligence and terrorism, and I stop listening, I'm looking at my phone." How do you
Yeah.
without, like, making it so much fear-based, I mean, do you have secret sauce to that?
I mean, a lot of it's relationship building, right? The
Yeah.
time invested in the relationship will build upon their willingness to be an active partner. And again, I want to take away as much of that concern from them. Just tell me where we're going and let me work with some of the venue security people and local law enforcement, and then I can help in the conversation about what mitigation should be put in place. But it's got to be, bless you, it's got to be that early on
Thank you.
discussion, and it can't be something that just spontaneously occurs. I've got to be learning, they've got to learn to respect me for what I do, and I've got to respect them for what they do when we come together as a team.
And what can you offer? I mean, what's the if you think about it, like, we're there to do one thing. We're there to protect the principal or the organization. We're looking at it from a threat lens, a protection lens, an intelligence lens. But what's the exhaust that we throw off that might be useful for them? Like, here, hey, while we're looking at this, we're going to pull off some stats that we can give to you. Or while we're doing this, we're happy to kind of lean in and help you develop this report that's going out, the what you need to know when you come to this conference or something. I mean, and you're right. And that goes back to relationship building.
Yeah, I mean, if
Um,
you eliminate some of the risks, right, to make it a more successful event, which in the end is their objective, right? They want a successful event. My job is to own the environment as much as I can then I can slowly take away the unknowns and the risks that end up resulting in a bad event. So again, I can become a good partner to them.
You know, we're at a time now, I think, where again, goes back to a conversation you and I had. I think you were traveling somewhere and I think I was sitting here. But like the idea before, and we mentioned this before, like it's no longer just the arm's length or the 10 yards. I mean, yes, that will always be there, everybody. I'm talking to everyone out there right now that's just like throwing their coffee against the wall. We know at the end of the day, get off the X. That's what it means. But get off the X means so many things now. Like we were saying before, digitally, narrative wise, information wise, and physically. But we tend and we grew from a guns, gates, guards kind of environment for all the folks like listening in, like, "Hey, I wanna get involved in this industry, Chuck. I'm involved. I'm excited. I wanna be all I can be and get out there and do it." How would you or what statement would you tell them, like, "Go study these things, go do these things," outside of going to get your protection certificate or wherever you go to do that? These are the other things gonna put you ahead of the game and make you more into like a Musashi of protection, if you will, as opposed to just a reactive waiting for the next job.
I know the audience would love to hear me say, go take, Bruce Lee's latest class on such and such, or, you know, John Wick's shooting course, whatever it may be. Um,
Check cleared, you all passed.
yeah, exactly. Honestly, if you want to make your way in this industry, you've got to be able to have relationships with people. You got to learn to be able to get people to trust you. And in that trust, take the skills you've groomed over time to begin to help educate them. I mean, sure, in the end, I need to be jack of all trades. I need to understand protective operations. I need to understand digital EP, technical surveillance countermeasures, physical security design. All that stuff needs to be in my Rolodex. I may not be an expert of all of them. I know enough to be able to have a solid conversation and build confidence with my client. But that's where it's got to start. If I'm just unable to hold an intelligent conversation with my principal or the principal's staff, I will always be deemed as guns and guards, get out of my way. You're just slowing me down.
Yep, yep. I agree. I would add 2 things. One, I'm surprised you haven't said this, so I'm gonna tee it up for you, and we'll first one I would add is critical thinking. Like, be learned, read something, go somewhere and like, "Ah, Chucks, I know how to solve problems. I know," but go and get something and understand, like, how to critically think a big task, because if you have a complex operation, you have a complex event. I think I've done several events that, the planning document was 50, 60 pages. And I've done some where you wrote it on the back of a napkin and said, "Let's do it live." But threat assessment. In all this, there's the moment in which somebody strange approaches or you get some strange mail. I was just talking to some folks at Race Secure earlier. You get strange mail, you get something, and now I need to start understanding the threat. I mean, how should people in the industry, whether I'm a leader or I'm just starting out, how do you help people coach them into the threat assessment stuff?
The biggest thing is you look at your TAPs, whether it's the US version, right? Association Threat Assessment Professionals. You look at the
Mhm.
Europeans, the Africans, wherever you look at the different TAP organizations, get involved in those groups. That's a good start because then you build a
Absolutely.
community of people who become resources when you need information. But you can also go to like the ATAP Worldwide website and you find their body of knowledge and you can download
Yep.
that body of knowledge and say, here's the list of books I'm going to read this year to inform me into what's the latest and greatest in threat assessment. Um,
Yep.
but I want to make sure that I'm clear. I think that sometimes people feel like, I'm so invested in that BTAM world that I forget the rest. I want to make sure that we're clear that that's a big piece of it, but I still need to understand random acts of violence. I still need to be able to understand all the core competencies of a protector. And now I insert behavioral threat assessment into how I perform my functions to make me elevated in the skills and services I offer.
Well, Chuck, I recall how many years ago was it when we were sitting at, I think it was Meta, now called Meta,
Hmm.
and we got together and you led us through an operation about like how do we start thinking about standards, realizing fully that, just by putting standards out there, it starts the conversation, which is most important. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there are so many things that a protection team and a leader must hold them accountable for.
Mhm.
If once we start talking about that, that's a whole separate conversation that I think I should have you back and let's talk about that. But you know, you have been somebody that I have watched and respected because you're of a short cadre of people I know that give back to the industry probably more than it gives. And, I wanna ask you about that. Like, why is that important to you?
Well,
I
I mean,
mean,
that's
I've been on many calls with you at 10 at night, 6 in the morning, planning, doing this. You were ATAP president. You took over IPSB presidency from me. I mean, none of this stuff you get paid for 0. And God bless your wife, by the way. What is that for you? What is like giving back to the community? Where does that come from?
for me, it's funny you say that because sitting on the lawnmower for a couple hours yesterday, which is my time to separate from the world, I was actually kind of thinking about this notion of disruptors versus agitators. And I brought this up on the IPSV call earlier that we are disruptors, right? We're trying to change the industry for the better, and we're trying to change it in a way that is positive. And I've always thought that I need to give back to the industry so that when I leave and move on, whether it's I depart by retirement or depart by other means, I want to make sure that it's better
I
than
hope
when I
retirement.
arrived. Yeah. So I think that's really it for me. And I mean, you see it, right? So ATAP, I started volunteering in 1999. I've been active in ATAP still on board
Yeah,
positions, IPSB, and then chairing the ASI standard. To me, the only way to make things different is to do something about it. And I
yeah,
think that you know this from having worked with me. My mantra for our employees: if I'm paying for you to have a membership in an organization, you better not be standing against the wall. Stand in
yep,
the middle of the room, lead the conversation, and that's the only way you're going to see things change. So I would hope
yep.
more people are willing to do that in a positive way, right? Not the agitator that just wants to, you know, pee on everything in front of them, right? We got to be the one
Well,
that's
yep.
collaboratively growing and working with the community to make things better for everybody.
I made an observation once in a meeting that there's a fine line between constructively disruptive and disruptive. And, this isn't about anyone individually, but, sometimes you come across these folks, mostly in corporate spaces, and they kinda get like, "Oh, I'm constructively disruptive," and and they become an agitator and they don't realize it,
Well,
in the same way,
yeah.
so.
But we saw it. I mean, jokingly, we were commenting about it on our call earlier about all the feedback about the assassination, in Utah,
Mhm.
and everybody's jumping on social media critiquing a team who they have no insight into the exact
Yeah,
operations they had put together, plan that they had worked on. Everybody's uh, backseat driving, trying to give direction on something that they had no insight into, and I think that that's not productive. It doesn't help
no.
things.
Any
Get
anything is preventable with a time machine and a howitzer.
exactly.
But I absolutely agree with you. Many of these things, it's a moment to stop and pause and reflect and say, 1, could it happen here? What do we know about it? What do we learn from it? And how can we prevent this again? I think those are, and I've heard you say that many times. All right, enough about that. Rapid fire time. Are you ready for this?
Let's go for it.
All right. I came up with 5 questions. Actually, I had like 15. My buddy, generative AI helped me boil them down to 5. So here's 5 rapid fire questions for you. Number 1, one immediate change to your protective intelligence intake or dashboard. What should that be?
Outreach. You can't expect all information to come to you. You got to do the active campaigning to get people to communicate back to you what you need to know.
I love that. Number 2, one escalation threshold that should be redefined today.
Escalation threshold into how I plan my mitigation strategy. Is that what you're?
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, I mean, what are we at? I mean, between two attempts on Trump, Charlie Kirk, the shooting at the ICE office, the distance has changed. We all know 0 to 10 yards is there. But we have to remind ourselves that open venues, open activities are a significant vulnerability. And we've got to dominate the high ground. We got to communicate that to planners. And I'll take a second answer to that if I could. That's not just around that. events, but it's also the amount of planning that's going into these activities really has to be forward leaning. It can't be reactive.
Love it. Number 3, one vetting or continuous screening action that needs to start this week, and that's for the corporate or the high net worth families that are listening in.
This is the one that my somebody always pisses on my parade. Sorry if I have to you'll have to blip that out later. But the enhanced background investigations for persons with intimate access to executives. I'm sorry, you
Has to
have people you
agree.
trust. We've got to start doing it. It's too real that whether it's a security team member or it's a housekeeper or it's the EA, we've got to get to a point where they're treated like an enhanced risk to the insider threat program.
I love it, and I 1000% agree with you. Number 4, one travel or event playbook update that's often overlooked.
We just touched on it, right? Dominate the high ground.
Yep, absolutely. And number 5, one executive behavior protocol. How should principals think or how shouldn't they think in response to publicity to threats?
Meaning somebody has publicized a threat about them or communicated a
Yeah,
threat. Let the threat management team handle it. Don't
behavior.
let your type A personality step in and decide you want to poke the bear. Let
Uh,
us decide how to manage the threat. Yeah.
my favorite, sir, please don't shake hands with them. Oh man, now he got the look. Awesome. I love those, my friend, and I appreciate it. Let me ask you one last question before we kind of think about closing here. I'm like, if you could give a single directive to like CEOs and boards and family offices about protection, one thing to start or stop, I mean, right now, what might that be?
Listen to your advisors. I mean, plain and simple. We even put this in the ASI standard.
Yep.
The influencer on the EP program is so far below the C-suite that by the time they communicate what is right, it sounds like we're ordering a banana split. And
Yeah, you're right.
we've got to fix that narrative, right? We've got to find a way for them to have a direct line to chief of staff, legal, whoever it may be, so that the message of what I see is communicated appropriately for the protected executives. That's the one thing I would say. And I'm trying to get my best in front of every board I can to say, listen to your experts. You don't go to your veterinarian to find out how to milk cows.
Yep.
Well, you do, maybe, but they're taking care of your dog, maybe not your cows.
Well, and yeah, you don't go to a plumber to get a teeth pulled.
Right.
So
Right.
invite, and you're right, absolutely. Invite your EP person to the board meeting. You don't have to give them a seat. Sorry, I know everyone talks about getting a seat, but just invite them into the room. So when the question occurs, no one's making it up. You can just turn around and say, give me some data points. So that's great. Chuck, how do people like, I know at risk is always in a hiring mode because you guys are on an incredible growth trajectory. I mean, how do people follow you at risk, but also how do they follow the work you're doing in the community, like through ASIS and IPSB and other places?
Well, obviously, IPSV is a great place to find out what's going on. We've got our close protection conference coming up in December. We have all these events between Mexico, Colombia, London, around the world. We're doing events. So go to those events because that's where you'll have to be part of the conversation. Certainly, you can find me on LinkedIn. I never go on Facebook, so follow there. And of course, you can always go to At Risk International and look at our site to see what opportunities we have and what things are trending.
I'm going to start a fake Chuck Tobin Facebook just because of that. Awesome. Well, brother, my friend, colleague, thank you for joining it and spending time with us today. I really appreciate this.
Uh, Always a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Full Spectrum Risk. Shout out to my colleague and friend and brother, Chuck Tobin, for joining us and sharing his practical perspectives on this tumultuous time. And it's certainly messy, rapidly evolving threat. And if you like this episode and it helped you, please subscribe and share. Follow 360 Privacy for more resources. And until next time, stay vigilant and keep thinking across the full spectrum of risk. You've been listening to Full Spectrum Risk, an original production from 360 Privacy, produced in partnership with Intel Lab. To learn more or connect with us, visit 360privacy.io. That's 360privacy.io. If you found this valuable, Please subscribe and share it with those who continue to lead through uncertainty.